The noise of expectations, assumptions, and distractions fades away, and all that's left is the truth. See, when you're constantly talking, constantly texting, constantly filling the space with words, you don't always hear what's really being said. But when the words stop, when the calls don't come, when the messages stay unread, that's when the real conversation begins. You can pretend when you're talking. You can make excuses, hide behind small talk, act like everything is fine, but silence doesn't lie. Silence exposes what words often cover up. And that's why so many people are afraid of it. They'd rather hear anything, even a lie, than sit in the quiet and face the truth. But the truth will always rise. If there was nothing real, the silence will confirm it. But if there was something real, something strong, something deeper than words, silence will prove it. Think about it. When two people truly belong together, their connection doesn't vanish just because they stop talking. It doesn't fade just because they give each other space. No, if something is real, it lingers. It stays in the atmosphere. It stays in the mind, in the heart, in the spirit. You don't have to force it, chase it, beg for it, because it was never built on words alone. It was built on something stronger. That's why silence is a test. It will reveal everything you need to know. It will tell you who was really there, who was just passing through, and who was only holding on out of habit. If silence makes a person disappear, they were never truly present to begin with. But if silence deepens the connection, if it strengthens the understanding, if it allows two people to think, to reflect, to grow, then that's something you can trust. A man who truly values a woman doesn't need daily texts to remember her worth. A woman who truly respects a man doesn't need constant reassurance to know his place in her life. Because when the foundation is strong, silence doesn't break it. It builds it. It makes room for growth, for wisdom, for discernment. Some of you have been in situations where you thought the relationship was strong, but the moment communication stopped, it crumbled. You thought they cared, but the silence proved otherwise. And that hurt, didn't it? That silence made you question everything. But I'm here to tell you that silence wasn't your enemy. That silence was your teacher. It was your answer. See, some people need to disappear so you can finally see them for who they really were. Some people need to stay quiet so you can finally hear God's voice over theirs. And some connections need to be tested, because if they can't survive a season of silence, they were never meant to survive a lifetime of storm. I know what you're thinking, but if they cared, wouldn't they reach out? If I mattered, wouldn't they say something? Maybe. Or maybe their silence is their way of processing, of understanding, of seeing things clearly for themselves. Maybe they're listening to the same silence you are, waiting for an answer, waiting for direction. Maybe, just maybe, the silence is working in your favor. If two people are truly meant to be, silence won't destroy them. It will shape them. It will refine them. It will prepare them for what's next. And when the time is right, when the lesson has been learned, when the growth has taken place, the silence will break, not with noise, not with empty words, but with clarity, with purpose, with something real. So don't fear the silence. Don't rush to fill it with meaningless words, with desperate actions, with forced connections. Let it do its work. Let it speak. Because if it's real, if it's truly meant to be, silence won't be the end of the story. It will be the proof that the story was never just words to begin with. Distance has a way of opening your eyes. When you're too close to something, when you're right up against it, you don't always see it clearly. You see what you want to see, what you hope to see, what you've convinced yourself is there. But step back, give it some space, and suddenly the truth comes into focus. Distance doesn't change what's real, it reveals it. Sometimes people think that if someone steps away, if they stop reaching out, if they don't check in every day, it means they don't care. But let me tell you something. Love isn't proven in constant presence. It's proven in how it holds up when presence is removed. If something is real, if something is rooted, then distance won't weaken it. It will clarify it. It will show you what's solid and what was just a shadow. You ever been so caught up in someone, so tangled up in their energy that you couldn't even tell whether they were good for you? Every conversation, every moment, every interaction felt like a rush, like a wave pulling you under. And then one day they pull back, or maybe you do, and at first you don't know what to do with the silence. You panic, you question, you want to fix it because the habit of them has become stronger than the reality of them. But then after some time passes, clarity sets in. You start to see things differently. You realize how much of yourself you were losing. You notice things you ignored before, the way they made you feel small, the way they took more than they gave, the way you had to shrink parts of yourself just to make them comfortable. See, when you're too close, you miss these things. But distance, it clears the fog. And sometimes distance doesn't just expose what was wrong, it confirms what was right. There are some people who, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much space comes between you, they remain. Not just in your mind, not just in memory, but in your spirit. And that's when you know the connection was never just about convenience, never just about habit, never just about filling time. It was about something deeper, something real. If a person's absence brings you peace instead of pain, that's an answer. If distance makes you realize that what you were holding on to is only holding you back, that's an answer. If stepping away from someone makes you feel more like yourself, that's an answer. Stop fighting for things that distance is trying to free you from. Stop chasing people that space is trying to separate you from. If something is meant for you, distance won't be able to break it. But here's where people get stuck. They think that if someone is truly meant for them, they should never have to experience distance in the first place. But let me ask you this. How can you know the strength of something if it's never been tested? How can you trust a connection if it's never had to stand on its own without constant reassurance, without constant contact? The strongest relationships, the deepest bonds, they are not afraid of space. They don't fear silence because they know that what is real does not fade. Some of you are in a season right now where God is allowing distance between you and someone you thought would always be there, and you're struggling because you don't understand why. But what if the distance is not a punishment? What if it's a gift? What if it's exactly what you need to see the situation for what it really is, to step outside of it long enough to know whether it's truly meant for you? When two people step back and still feel drawn toward each other, when space doesn't create doubt but builds certainty, when time apart strengthens rather than weakens, that's something you can trust. That's something you don't have to force, because love, real love, doesn't need to be proven in a hurry. It proves itself over time. So stop fearing distance. Stop trying to close a gap that was meant to show you the truth. Because if someone is truly meant to be in your life, distance won't take them away. It will bring them back with more clarity, more purpose, and more certainty than ever before. Sometimes what feels like an ending is just a pause. They are divine pauses. See, when something is meant for you, when God has ordained a connection, time and space cannot destroy it. If something was built by Him, it does not fall apart just because communication stops. It does not fade just because emotions settle. No, what's real remains, even in silence. And sometimes that silence is necessary not to end something, but to prepare it for the next season. We live in a world that tells us we have to keep moving, keep talking, keep proving, keep chasing. But there are moments when God will step in and say, wait. Moments when He will separate two people, not to break them, but to refine them. Because there are some lessons that can only be learned in solitude. There are some strengths that can only be built in isolation. There are some truths that can only be revealed when all distractions are removed. And so he allows the pause, he allows the distance, not because he's done working, but because he's preparing something greater. Maybe you've been in a situation where everything was going well, where the connection felt strong, where you were convinced that nothing could shake it, and then without warning, things changed. The calls slowed down, the text became less frequent, the presence you were so used to was no longer there. And in that moment, doubt crept in, fear whispered lies. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe it's over. But listen to me. God does not operate in fear. He does not take something away to punish you. He removes it to strengthen you. Sometimes he will create distance, not because the connection is weak, but because he needs both people to grow individually before they can come back together. If you try to force something before it's time, you risk ruining what was meant to be a blessing. You have to trust the pause. Think about a seed. When you plant it, you don't see instant results. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. No, you trust the process. You let it sit in the soil, unseen, untouched, knowing that growth is happening beneath the surface. And when the time is right, it breaks through stronger, more rooted, more prepared for what's ahead. The same is true for relationships. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. Just because things feel still doesn't mean they're not progressing. Sometimes God is doing his best work in the quiet. And here's the thing, if something is not meant for you, the pause will reveal that too. If distance causes something to fall apart, then it was never built on solid ground. But if after the space, after the silence, after the stillness, two people come back together with more clarity, more wisdom, more certainty, that's when you know it was real. That's when you know it wasn't just emotion, wasn't just convenience, wasn't just a temporary attachment. It was something with purpose. So don't fight the pause, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't force something that God is asking you to step back from. If it is meant to be, nothing will keep it from coming together in the right time, in the right way, for the right reasons. And when that moment comes, it won't just be a reunion, it will be a testimony of what happens when you trust the process, trust the growth, and trust that what God ordains, no distance, no silence, no time apart can ever destroy. When two people stop communicating, something shifts in the atmosphere. In the silence, in the space, in the absence of words, clarity rises. But clarity isn't just about what you see in the other person, it's about what you see in yourself. Because when someone is no longer constantly present, when their voice is no longer filling your thoughts, when their energy is no longer shaping your emotions, you are left with you. And that's where the real work begins. See, some people are afraid of being alone with their own thoughts. They are afraid of the stillness because in that stillness, they have to confront themselves. They have to ask questions they've been avoiding. Was I giving too much? Was I ignoring red flags? Was I settling for less than I deserved? And sometimes the hardest truth to face is the one that tells you I was losing myself in that connection. I was so focused on keeping them, on making them happy, on proving my worth that I forgot about me. Distance forces you to look inward, to see the parts of yourself you've been neglecting, to recognize the places where you compromise too much, and to ask yourself, who am I when they're not around? Not who am I in this relationship, not who am I in their eyes, but who am I truly? Because if you don't know that answer, if you can't stand strong in your own identity, then you will always be at risk of losing yourself in someone else. So when communication stops, when the back and forth comes to an end, it's not just about what happens to the relationship, it's about what happens to you. Do you crumble? Do you chase? Do you fill the silence with distractions so you don't have to feel? Or do you pause, breathe, and begin the process of rediscovering who you are? Because if a connection required you to shrink, if it required you to suppress your own needs, if it made you question your value, then the distance is not your enemy, it is your deliverance. There is a version of you that existed before you met them, a version of you that had dreams, ambitions, a vision for your life, and somewhere along the way, maybe you started adjusting, started compromising, started bending in ways you never intended to. But hear me, if love requires you to lose yourself, it is not love, it is attachment, it is fear, it is familiarity. And sometimes the reason God allows space between you and another person is so that you can find your way back to yourself. Because when you truly know who you are, you don't settle for connections that require you to beg for attention. You don't cling to situations that leave you questioning your worth. You don't chase after someone who is content living without you. No, when you know who you are, you stand firm. You walk in confidence. You understand that real love, true love, does not demand that you lose yourself. It celebrates all of who you are. So use the silence, use the distance, not as a punishment, not as a waiting game, but as an opportunity to grow, to heal, to build a kind of life where your happiness is not dependent on another person. Because the healthiest, strongest relationships are not built on dependency. They are built on two whole people coming together, not to complete each other, but to complement each other. And when you do the work, when you use this time to strengthen your spirit, to remind yourself of your worth, to become everything God intended you to be, you will realize something. You don't have to chase what is meant for you. You don't have to convince someone of your value, because the right person, the one who truly sees you, who truly appreciates you, will recognize your worth without you having to lose yourself to prove it. There comes a moment in life when you have to ask yourself a simple but powerful question. If someone can go days, weeks, even months without reaching out to me, without checking in, without making an effort, what does that really mean? See, people can say all the right things. They can make promises. They can tell you they care. But words are easy. It's actions that tell the truth. It's consistency that reveals real intention. And sometimes the silence, the distance, the lack of effort, that is your answer. Too often, people hold on to potential instead of reality. They replay memories. They hold on to the good moments. They remind themselves of all the times that person was present, engaged, affectionate. And they let those moments outweigh what's actually happening in the present. But hear me, love is not built on what used to be, it's built on what is. And if someone is choosing not to reach out, not to check on you, not to make sure you're okay, then you have to stop making excuses for them and start seeing it for what it is. Some people don't reach out because they assume you'll always be there. They assume that no matter how much time passes, no matter how little effort they put in, you'll still be waiting, still be available, still be ready to pick up where they left off. And that is why you have to be careful about what you allow. Because when you accept inconsistency, when you tolerate neglect, when you give people permission to come and go as they please, you teach them that your presence is guaranteed no matter how they treat you. But your presence is a privilege. Your energy is a gift. Your love, your time, your loyalty, those things are valuable. And if someone cannot see that, if someone does not value that, then you have to be strong enough to stop waiting for them to wake up and start walking away. Because the hard truth is, when someone truly cares, when someone truly values you, they will show you, they will make the effort. They will make the effort. They will reach out, not just when it's convenient, not just when they need something, but because they don't want to go a day without making sure you know you matter to them. So if someone has gone silent, if someone has pulled away, if someone has chosen not to reach out, let them. Stop chasing, stop questioning, stop trying to decode their behavior. Because the right person won't leave you confused. The right person won't make you wonder. The right person will move toward you, not away from you. They will protect the connection. They will invest in the relationship, and they will make it clear, without you having to beg, without you having to chase, without you having to constantly remind them of your worth. And that's what this season is about. Learning to let go of anyone who does not see your value, learning to stop overextending yourself for people who would not do the same for you, learning to recognize that silence is not always something to be fixed. Sometimes it's something to be respected. If they are not reaching out, then maybe that's your sign to stop reaching too. If they are not making an effort, then maybe that's your cue to shift your focus onto yourself. Because the right people, the ones who are truly meant to be in your life, will not have to be convinced to stay. They will want to be there. They will show up. They will make sure you never have to question where you stand. And when you start operating from that mindset, when you stop chasing, when you stop begging for the bare minimum, when you start realizing that your worth is not tied to whether or not someone else chooses you, that's when everything changes. That's when you start attracting people who truly appreciate you. That's when you start seeing who is really for you and who was only there because you made it easy for them. And that's when you step into your power, knowing that you don't have to fight for a place in anyone's life, because the right people will always make room for you. There comes a time when you have to stop looking at what someone is doing and start looking at what they're not doing. See, absence speaks. Silence tells a story. The lack of effort is an answer all by itself. And the truth is, if someone can live without you, if they can go days, weeks, months without reaching out, then you have to stop holding space for someone who has already made the choice to step back. Because when someone truly values you, they don't put themselves in a position to lose you. It's easy to say, maybe they're busy. It's easy to say, maybe they're waiting for me to reach out first. It's easy to make excuses for why they haven't called, why they haven't checked in, why they haven't made the effort. But hear me, people make time for what matters to them. People prioritize who they want in their life. And if someone is not making time for you, if someone is not prioritizing you, then you have to be honest with yourself about what that means. Because the more you chase, the more you fight for someone who is showing you they're comfortable being without you, the more you lose sight of your own worth. Some people pull away not because they're confused, not because they're unsure, but because they're comfortable. They know that no matter how much distance they create, no matter how long they take to reach out, you'll still be there. And as long as you keep proving them right, as long as you keep making yourself available to someone who is inconsistent, they will never feel the need to change. Why would they? You've already shown them that your presence is guaranteed no matter how they treat you. But when you stop chasing, when you stop reaching, when you stop being the one to always close the gap, something shifts. Suddenly they start noticing the silence. They start realizing that you are no longer the one keeping the connection alive. And let me tell you, that's when the truth comes out. Because a person who truly values you will not let the silence last. A person who truly cares will not risk losing you. But a person who was only halfway in, a person who was only there because it was easy, because they didn't have to do the work, that person will let you go without a fight. And that is your answer. So instead of fearing the silence, instead of filling the space with assumptions and overthinking, let the distance do what it's supposed to do. Let it reveal, let it expose, let it make it clear whether this connection was built on true intention or just convenience. Because the truth is, when someone is for you, they will make sure you know it. When someone truly wants to be in your life, they will show you. They will not leave you in a place of confusion. They will not make you question where you stand. They will not let you go without a fight. And when you start moving with that understanding, when you stop begging for love, when you stop overextending for people who wouldn't do the same for you, when you truly start walking in your worth, you will realize something powerful. You don't have to lose yourself to keep someone else. You don't have to chase what is meant for you. You don't have to fight for a place in the life of someone who truly sees your value. Because the right person will never put you in a position where you have to wonder if you matter to them. They will never let the silence last long enough for you to question your place. They will never make you feel like an option when you were always meant to be a priority. So let the silence speak. Let the distance do its work. And trust that what is truly meant for you will never require you to beg, to chase, or to convince someone of your worth. Because the right people will always make sure you know you belong.